This podcast is sponsored by FlyingEagleGold.com. When you reach a point in your preparedness plan where you start saying to yourself, I need to preserve my savings. I need to make sure that the economy crash doesn't destroy my life savings or the wealth that I have stored. You're going to be looking for gold and silver, which are the assets that are going to protect your wealth. When you get to that point, give Jeff a call at 855-289-7587. And of course, let him know you heard about him on the Preparedness podcast. But I would also suggest that even if you're not quite at that point, go to FlyingEagleGold.com and start looking over the information, because there may come a time in the very near future that you may say to yourself, you know what, it's time to move, and it's time to move now because I see that the market is shifting and I want to preserve before either the dollar crashes or inflation really strikes and starts eroding more of our purchasing power away. So, become informed about what gold and silver can do for you, and you can find a lot of great information on Jeff's site. So go ahead and check it out, FlyingEagleGold.com. Howdy, folks. Rob Hannes here for the Preparedness Podcast, the podcast that brings you the best in preparedness information. As I had mentioned on the last podcast, we're going to have an interview, or I interviewed Kerry Lutz from FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com, and it ended up being a really great interview, so I'm excited to present it to you. Before I get to that, just a couple quick announcements. Going to mention the listener survey and the newsletter tip sign up. Both of those are on the website. You can find us online at thepreparednesspodcast.com. You can follow us on Twitter at PrepCast. If you've got a Facebook page, we'd appreciate it if you would like us at, I think it's just Preparedness Podcast on Facebook. If you search for Preparedness Podcast, you'll find us. There's not a whole lot of people named Preparedness Podcast. I'm looking forward to heading out to Bakersfield next month. Now, you know what? I realized just after I published the last podcast where I mentioned this, I keep saying it's the first weekend in June. It's actually the second weekend in June. For some reason, I always think that when a weekend is in single digits, it's always the first weekend, but this is actually the second weekend in June, June 8th and 9th, at Bakersfield for the Prepare to Endure Preparedness Expo. You can find all about that, the information for that if you're going to be in the area. I'm going to be speaking about EMP both Saturday and Sunday. Going to have a booth there. You can meet me. I'll have the EMP book there. Really hoping we're going to have the PCC book there. But you can find all the information about the expo at preparetoendure.com. That's prepare2endure.com. Now, this is another interview podcast, and I have more interviews coming up. I'm scheduling more, and I have more scheduled already. And you may be thinking, why so many interviews? Well, it's part of my philosophy or my thinking about the whole community aspect. When my wife and I went to the last Preparedness Expo, the Prepper Fest here in Scottsdale, it was really great to see all the different vendors, all the people who are, preppers themselves, all the people that came there, except for maybe the media and a few gawkers, all the people there were preppers. So it was almost like one big, huge family. I mean, you could pull over or stop just about anybody in the aisle as you passed them and start talking about some prepper topic, and you didn't have to worry about have them look at you like you're kind of weird or you're antisocial, whatever. It was very cool. And so that kind of got me thinking that, I need to reach out to more people and kind of spread the word on what other people are doing, because I don't, even if I put out a podcast every day and broadcast for 3 or 4 hours a day, I still probably wouldn't hit all the information that's out there. There's far too much stuff to cover. And there's a lot of great people who are putting out a lot of great information, and I wanted to connect you with as many as I can. And honestly, like I said, I don't know everything. So the more people I can connect with, the more that I get to learn too. I mean, we all get to learn together, which is, I think, the best way to do it. If you can't reach out to your neighbors because of the operational security aspect, which I totally understand, at least you can reach out to other people in the area and get to know them in a relatively safe way. Meetup.com is a great way to do that. Prepper Expos is a great way to do that. Your local vendors, a lot of these people are local. I know a lot of the vendors that were at the last few expos, they're local. Now, some of them are regional, like maybe from the next state or whatever, but a lot of them are already here. So you can start connecting to these people and either start to learn who's in your area, learn where the resources are, who's selling what, who's got what. But I just think it's a great opportunity to reach out and expand and get to know more people. So that's kind of why I'm doing the interview segment right now. Also, one last announcement before we get to the interview. If you're not familiar, if you haven't checked it out, every day I'm putting out what I call the Prepper Newswatch, which is a collection of news articles from the past 24 hours or so, or possibly over the weekend if it's a Monday. This is where you can find a lot of good information that you may not be finding elsewhere because, as I've explained on past podcasts, I hit a lot of news sources, and when I come across either something interesting or cool or something I think preppers would have an interest in, I'm throwing it up on there. So if you go to the website, thepreparednesspodcast.com, you'll see them there. Well, I think that's about all I wanted to say here in the beginning. I didn't want to take up too much time. So let's just get to the interview here. On the line with me is Kerry Lutz of FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. Kerry has a podcast and a radio station show on WPSL, and he's joining us, and we're going to be talking about financial survival. This is one of the things that we talk about, and I'm not a financial guru. We talk about gold and silver. We talk about having the wherewithal to withstand financial stress, whether it is a monetary collapse or a job loss or anything in between. It's one of those things that we should be prepared for. And so I invited Kerry to come on and talk to us, and he can, give us some information from a different viewpoint. Kerry, welcome to the show.
Rob, thanks so much for having me on. It's really an honor.
Thank you. So what are some of the main things that you try to get across to your listeners as far as financial survival?
Well, it really requires a plan, because you know as well as I know that these are uncertain times. We could wake up one day and you go to the ATM and it doesn't work, and they say, "Oh, that's no problem. I'll go to the supermarket, give them my ATM card or my credit card, and I'll go buy groceries." And you go there, and all of a sudden you find out, my credit card's not working either. What am I going to do? And therefore, maybe that's not going to happen. I can't predict the future. You can't. But if you have a plan and you're ready for the possibility of a collapse, of a sudden hiccup in the international monetary system, and you've planned for it, then your options will be a lot greater than if you have no food in your house and no precious metals and no currency, and then you're at the mercy of the government coming to your rescue.
Well, we talk about having a plan on the Preparedness podcast a lot. You want to be able to prepare yourself so that whatever the event may be, it might be something as bad as Cyprus, or again, it could be a power outage or an internet outage, something that shuts down the banks. You could have a job loss, and that job loss in today's economy could last far longer than you would anticipate. So one of the things I recommend is having cash on hand to be able to pay your bills as you would normally. Now, I recommend somewhere in the area of 3 to 6 months as a general guideline. What would you suggest?
Well, I think there's a couple of different things situations or possibilities that you need to prepare for. Number one is that potential job loss, and that's one part of the plan. And there's one way to deal with that. The other way is a systemic failure, like we almost had in 2008, where Lehman collapsed and all of these investment banks collapsed. Then we had TARP. Then we had massive money printing from Uncle Ben. Helicopter Ben just went and literally dropped trillions of dollars into the world economy to keep it going. So you need to be prepared for both of those possibilities. So let's take the job situation first, right? That requires you to really honestly assess what would happen if you were to lose your job on Monday. What would happen to you? And there, the key is to live beneath your means, to spend only what you need to be spending on. And the other thing is get another income stream. Okay. It's easier said than done. I know it's hard for you to do that, especially if you've been with your company for 20 years and you thought you were going to retire with a gold watch, although there's not many of you that really are in that enviable situation any longer, right? I mean, it's just probably not going to be the case that you work in the same job for the rest of your life. So that means downsize your car, downsize your life, cut your expenses to an absolute minimum and save as much as you can. But you don't want to keep it all on paper, because we get to systemic risk, which is what happens when the ATMs don't work. What happens if the paper becomes not worth your dollars, your fiat currency isn't worth the paper that it's not printed on. You got a real problem there. So some elemental holding of silver at the very least, and if you can afford it, some gold as well, makes a lot of sense. And you have to be the judge of that. I think, and you'll probably agree, Rob, but right now they've got their eyes set, the powers that be, confiscation of your IRA, your 401k. So if you can beat them to the punch, get out of those, get them out of the paper economy, and especially now with the prices of metals plunging the way they have in the past couple of months, you can buy a lot more than you could have 2-3 months ago. So those are the things you need to do. Try to propagate or create another income stream so that if you lose the job, you'll be making some money. And look, I mean, if you got a house and you have empty bedrooms, that other income stream could be going to Airbnb, listing your room and renting it out to people who are traveling. There's a lot of ways that you can do it. You always have alternatives. It might be that you get a second job. That's another way to do it. But you can't hope and pray that the government is going to be there to save you, because when you need them the most, that's when you're not going to be able to find them.
Exactly. I agree. One of the things that I think is easier today than probably has been in the past is developing a secondary or even a tertiary stream of income because of the internet. There is a lot of things that can be done. Like you said, you can rent out a room. Airbnb, if I remember correctly, is where you basically open up your part of your house to a bread and breakfast or something like that, and people can come and stay, and you can make some money that way. But you can look at and find all sorts of different aspects out there. There are lots of resources that were far more difficult to access, even say 5-6 years ago. There's many more websites out there that you can look to things, either sell or get things for free or get some help or find a way to make some extra income. So yes, I agree. People should definitely be looking at, and maybe not actively doing it right now. I mean, if you're working a full-time job and a family and stuff, it may be difficult to actually do it, but you should at least be trying to learn a new skill or finding these resources so that you can make the switch as fast as possible, should you need to.
Yeah, I'll give you a perfect example. My son had a job. He worked at the local ski shop, bike shop. And he said to me one day, Dad, I really feel like I've learned everything I can from that job. And I don't enjoy it anymore. There's no challenge there. I want to do something else. And I said, hey, that's fine. you're young, you're only 16. You're still my dependent. I'll take care of you. And, he was just working to get extra money, which most of it he saved. And he went onto the internet looking for other jobs that he could do. And he found two sites. One was called Associated Content. The other was called Text Broker. And he started writing for people. They would give him assignments. He'd get $8 to $16 for about half hour's worth of work. He was an okay writer at the time. Believe me, he wasn't Hemingway. I'm not either. But he built a reputation, and they were paying him a lot more money. He was making $100 a week as a 16-year-old just writing things for people and doing research on the internet. A lot of times he was writing about drug research, medical research, whatever they wanted. He could do a credible job at it. Like I said, his writing might not have been perfect, but it was good enough that people could take it and edit it and do what they wanted. That's just one small example. There's so many ways. If you have talent in art, if you're a good graphics person, you could go over to eGuru, or you can go to Elance. I think it's guru.com and Elance. You could be doing graphics projects for people, research projects. There's so many ways of doing it. You could be a virtual assistant. I had an assistant at one time, virtual assistant in the Philippines. I gave him a list of tasks every day. He worked for me 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, paid him whatever it was. It was below minimum wage, what you'd pay in the U.S., but the work wasn't that challenging. But you could be a virtual assistant. So there's so many things that you could do if you just decide that you're open to it and you want to do it. So that's number one. And then the backup money supply, because gold and silver have always been money. They're always going to be money, regardless what the Federal Reserve tells you. So having, if you're starting out now, you go start buying rolls of pre-1965 dimes, one roll every week or two for a couple $100, and you buy some quarters and $50, and you keep doing it. That's the key. You must be consistent. You can't just say you're going to do it and never do it. The plan starts with action, and the sooner you take that action, the better you're going to feel. The other thing, Rob, is it's empowering. When you go and you start doing this and you say, I'm not going to be a ward of the state no matter what happens, I am going to take responsibility, and you then set about doing it, it changes you, and it's really a change in your lifestyle totally.
Being prepared is a lifestyle change. It's something we've talked about on the podcast where, there are some people who want to be prepared and they think they can maybe take a couple weekends and get prepared and then they're done. And while that a good step, it's a good thought process, and it'd be great if you could do that. To be truly prepared, it's like anything else. If you want to invest, or if you want to be the best artist, or if you want to be the best guitar player or motorcycle rider, it takes work. Even hobbies, to be good at it, you need to spend some time with it. Well, it's the same thing with preparedness. If you want to be well prepared, if you want to be prepared or truly prepared, it's going to take some time and some investment of your time and resources in order to get that way. Now, Kerry, one of the things people ask me, or one of the arguments they try to make is, well, I don't want to have gold and silver because I can't eat it. I'd rather have food. And to some extent I agree that you can't eat gold and silver. However, I can't eat my gun, I can't eat my flashlights, I can't eat my bag, I can't eat a lot of things, but yet I still consider them to be important. Just out of curiosity, what is your rebuttal to somebody like that who says, oh, you can't eat your gold and silver, so therefore it's no good?
Yeah, well, it's part of an overall strategy. So yes, you can't eat gold and silver, but you can't spend your food. You might be able to barter for it. You might be able to take your extra ammo and barter for that. But in the final analysis, being prepared requires you to have a food supply. And, we both go to PrepareWise. I just got a huge shipment. I've got about 6 months supply now for one person, 3 for 2. And And then I've got some precious metals. You don't want to keep a lot in your house on your person because it can get taken away. And I've got a means of self-defense. And I've got water in the house because you must have water. And one of the things I got, you're going to love this, Bob. I don't know if you ever thought of it or not, but I read it somewhere. It was part of this guy's bug out kit. And on the outside of every commercial building in this country, in the world, you will see on the outside a faucet, basically. And it's got a special valve on it that you have to put in. I think it's called a Silcock valve or something like that.
Yeah, It's a special handle that fits on this little.
Right.
It's like the handle is missing. It's got a special,
inset.
Inset that you have to fit onto it to get it to turn.
Right. So I got 3 of them because you might not be able to get water in your house, but a lot of commercial buildings will have a water tank above or within the place. So even if you can't get water from your place, you can go there with a bucket and get water. So the things cost me $1.65 a piece. I bought them on Amazon, and it was it was quite enlightening. I never thought of it before. In New York City, every one of these buildings has one of these valves, and in New York City, every building has a water tower to equalize the pressure because they did that a long time ago, so that you wouldn't. So the buildings, if a huge skyscraper, everybody turns on the sink at once, it won't shut down the system in the entire city. So everyone's got a water tower to equalize pressure. And guess what? When you can't get water, then they'll have it, and all you got to do is just go there and turn the thing on. And believe me, you'll be a very popular person when people see you doing that as well. And that's just one thing in your kit. I think you need to have a certain supply of vital medications. You can't go overboard for this, you just need to have the things that you need to have. Everybody needs to make the decision how much they want, how much you want to keep in your inventory. What I like about the PrepareWise food is comes in a bucket. If you got to evacuate your house like they did during the hurricane, you throw the thing into your car, into your trunk, or you carry it with you in a backpack, whatever it is, and you got like a bunch of food there, and hopefully you won't need it for long. My personal feeling is, I'm sure you said it, that the average supermarket's got 3 days supply of food there. That will be wiped out within the first 4 hours of any widespread outage or disruption in society. So then what you have to do is go and get your own supply. So if you've got this, then you're that much further ahead.
Yeah, well, that 3-day supply in the grocery store is a 3-day supply under normal buying conditions. Once people panic and everybody runs to the store, it's not going to last no 3 days. So definitely a good point. Now, hey, you had brought up a point about not storing a lot of your precious metal at home. Where do you recommend storing that?
Yeah, well, not in bank safe deposit boxes. Maybe you bury it. Maybe if you have enough, you go and you put it offshore, some of it. There are ways of doing everything. I mean, if you go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, we've got a special report on where to put your gold, and we've got some things that nobody ever thought of doing there. And, it'll make a big difference. So without getting too specific about it, here's the thing. It's called a 4-way Silcock key, T154. Get those. I mean, I'm telling you, $1.50. So where you put your metals, only you need to know about it. You don't tell people that you have it, and you put it in a place that's accessible wherever it may be, and just get the report. I don't recommend bank safe deposit boxes, although you can store some in there temporarily. There are better places, depending where you're located, where you get 24/7 access to the boxes out there, almost under any circumstances, and they're secured 24/7 under video surveillance with armed guards, and you just have to go get that report. We put a lot of time and thought into doing it. I've used the technique before, but go take a look at it because, you need to come up with other ways. Burying it, so-called midnight gardening in your backyard, not a bad idea. Just don't forget where you put it and make sure you let somebody know. That's the other thing. You must tell other people, your trusted inner circle. Even if you don't tell them, you have to give them a means of figuring it out should anything happen to you, because that's the other part. You're doing this to protect your family. If they don't know where it is, then they're at a real disadvantage trying to find it if you're not around.
Yeah, that's some pretty good information. It's good to know. I'm going to look for that link and I'll put it in the show notes. Now, do you have a basic recommendation on where or how people should structure their on or at-home cash for how much cash, how many months of bills, how much gold, how much silver, how much barter materials? Do you have any sort of rule of thumb that you generally use?
Well, like when it comes to having the job, losing the job, obviously, if you've got 6 months worth of cash to cover expenses, that's ideal. When it comes to how much currency you need in the event of a financial system failure or disruption, that's where it gets a little dicey, because if it's a real disruption, at some point, your currency is probably going to become worthless, and then it goes to gold and silver in a barter type economy. I mean, I don't want to get too carried away with it. It's an insurance policy. Just look at it that way, not an investment. It's nothing else but insurance for if these politicians screw up so badly that they destroy the economic system. And there's nothing there to stop them from doing this. There's no limits on the government on what they can do and what they're capable of doing. So this is why you need to prepare, because you can't trust them. So, it's really an individual thing. Some people will want to have 10% of their assets in precious metals. Others won't be able to afford that, and others will want to have far more than that. But don't be fazed by the gyrations, the daily ups and downs of the paper precious metals markets, because they're becoming less and less relevant.
Yeah, well, we've seen how bankers treat other people in other countries. Cyprus is a very recent example, but we have the whole collapse of the euro and the Greece and Italy and all those issues over there, and I really think it's only a matter of time before we see something here. I don't think we can continue with the QE and the debt that we're amassing and the absolute debasing of the dollar here without having some sort of repercussions. I have no idea when that's going to happen. I just kind of can see this, and you're like, hey, it cannot last forever. Not that I'm asking you to make any predictions, but do you have any gut feelings about how much longer we're going to be looking at QE, or how much more we can maybe expect to see the way things are going right now? I mean, do you see a crash soon, 10 years, 2 years? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I thought the crash was coming in 08 and 09, and I started stocking up then. Obviously, I was wrong, although the crash is still happening. We're still feeling the repercussions of what happened in 08 and 09. There's people that are smarter than me about it. Guy Charles Nenner and Company, Nenner. He says in a year, you're going to see a waterfall in the dollar. Will it become worthless? Perhaps not. But you could see a lot of countries running for the exit in terms of treasury bills, in terms of government debt. And I think it's going to happen sooner than anyone believes possible. It might take more time to happen, but when it does happen, it's going to happen a lot faster than you ever envisioned. So we could be looking at a year where this event happens, but I'm with you. Can't give the exact timing of the event, but I do believe it's inevitable. It's too much debt. Can't pay it back. Can't even pay the interest on the debt now,
Yeah, and that's one of the things I keep looking at is the failure or the rot in the system keeps getting worse every year, but yet, we kind of seem to keep everything floating along for a little bit longer. And I think that puts a lot of people asleep. But I think we can look at other case histories in history for other countries, Cyprus again being one of those, where when it happens, it happens very quickly. It usually happens on a Friday night, where, suddenly the banks are closed because, it's a weekend. People aren't paying as close attention on Friday. That's when they dump a lot of things in the news that they don't really want people to know, even though they know it's going to come out anyways. People tend to overlook a lot of things in the news on the weekend, and that's why they do stuff like this. So I actually think, personally, that we're in the beginning stages of hyperinflation. Now, how bad it'll be, I don't know, but if you look at what we're paying for various products, food, fuel, various things like that, it looks like we may be very well in the beginning stages of hyperinflation.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, Rob, is I don't think you could classify it as hyperinflation, but certainly inflation is much higher than you thought. I mean, I had a chart the other day, I can't find it right now, where basically you're looking at costs of things like butter, like beef, chicken, all these little things, milk. They've gone way, way up since '08, and they're much more indicative of the true rate of inflation than those bogus numbers that the government releases every so often, because those numbers are total fantasy. You just need to go to the gas station, go to the supermarket. Yeah, maybe if you want to buy a house, although arguably even the price of housing is starting to rise because there's so much money out there. The stock market is the perfect example of what happens when you print up money out of thin air. Where it goes doesn't go to help the people, doesn't go to help you actually improve your life. It goes there so banksters can arbitrage and write derivatives and do a whole bunch of things that really aren't good for you, and that really just have, it's just a game. So I agree that inflation is much higher. I mean, year to year, price of a Thanksgiving meal has gone up 13% in a row for the last 4 years. So just looking at that, the price has pretty much doubled when you figure the compounding. And, I agree with you that the dollar is losing purchasing power at home and abroad, along with every other fiat currency out there. It's the race to debase. And somehow they think if they just keep printing money, look at Japan. Now Japan's gotten to the point they started printing in real excessively and trying to bring down interest rates. What happened to their 10-year? It shot up. It went up pretty big time. And that's what I think you can look forward to for the U.S. in the future.
Yeah, I don't think that we're in hyperinflation. I think that we're starting to slide that way. If you look, I actually meant to do a podcast. I never really got around to it, and it's been months now, so I would have to recalculate. But I was looking at what the prices were like 4 years ago, I think 8 years ago, or 4 and 10, or something like that. And when you look at the percentage of how much has increased, we're talking double digits. Sometimes it's as low as 8, but I think the average was somewhere between 15 and 25% increase over 4, 6, 8, 10 years. That's quite a bit. And no, that's not hyperinflation levels yet, but it's not the 3% that we're being told, or 2.6, whatever number they're pulling out of their hat at any given day. But I do wonder if this is the first beginning stages. I've never been through hyperinflation. I got to wonder if this is the slow slide into that area.
Yeah, it could well be. It could well be the beginning of it. Whether we go into hyperinflation or not, what's the difference? You get 10, 20% inflation per year. Your dollar is worth half in 5 years. And as well as I do, if you look at the charts from when the Federal Reserve was chartered in 1913 to now, that 1913 dollar, as opposed to the 2013 dollar, it's worth 2 cents what a $19, $13 is. So to see it go down even more, certainly you can't be surprised. And, at some point, the world is going to wake up and say, hey, these dollars are becoming worth less and less all the time, and we can't use this as the reserve currency. And that's when the fun's going to begin.
Yeah, well, if the dollar does stop being the global reserve currency, which, like you said, we're starting to see that, that means a whole new bag of hurt for the United States. And I don't even have the ability to kind of extrapolate what that's going to look like. From what I've read, it's not good. We basically become a third world country overnight because we have all this debt, we have all this worthlessness in our economy, and then suddenly we have a worthless money on top of it, which cannot be supported by printing. The creation of money, it can't be supported like we're doing now. So in China and Russia and Brazil and I think a couple other countries have already made moves to bypass the dollar on several huge issues of buying gold and I think steel and oil. Not gold. No, I think gold too. I think Russia and gold had a. So it is one of the issues, and so I think one of the most important things that I try to get people to understand when I talk about financial preparedness is that you need to be consistent. A lot of people are on a budget. A lot of people are cash strapped because it's a tough economy. But use this time now to slowly build up whatever you can. Food, water filters, flashlights, guns and ammo, gold and silver. I'm not a buy gold, buy silver, don't worry about food and ammo. I'm very much you should have as much as you can of everything, so you're prepared all over on a very well-rounded basis. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to be able to take a look at your finances. If you do have some extra capital, that's where I always say is like, okay, you've got your food storage, or you're going really well in your food storage and your supplies, and you would like to be able to preserve the value of your savings. That's when I think gold and silver really come into play, because you can take that, and I wouldn't say put all your savings in there. And this is what I do, is I take some of my savings, and when I can afford to buy some gold and silver, I will. Now, I bought most of my stuff years ago. I mean, most of the silver I own, I bought when it was like $4.50 an ounce.
Good move.
Yeah.
Good move.
Yeah. And it's very cool to see how, what is it, 22, 23 bucks an ounce now?
Yeah.
Until I remember that really it's not 22 bucks. I'm probably buying, if I spend 20 bucks now, I'm probably getting $5 worth of goods back when I originally bought the silver. So it's not necessarily more money. It just is the same purchasing power.
Yeah, exactly. It's an insurance policy. That's all it is. And, you can't expect to get wealthy from your precious metals holdings, although if and when the dollar has that existential event, the purchasing power of precious metals will skyrocket overnight all over the world. And, it can very well make the difference between you surviving and not surviving. I'll tell you a little anecdote that Chris Waltzek over at Goldseek Radio always recounts, and I love it because I don't know if it's true or not, but it isn't a stretch to think it might be. But a guy was a bellhop in a hotel in Berlin, and this is right before they went into hyperinflation during the Weimar Republic, and he got a tip. He got a $20 gold piece, which was a lot of money back then, talking hundreds of dollars now as a tip, and he kept it. And a year later, the German currency, the Weimar, basically became worthless. Wheelbarrows, we all know the stories. And he was able to take that $20 gold piece and buy the hotel that he worked in for $20. That's how valuable gold became in that society. I'm not saying you're going to be able to buy the Empire State Building for a $20 gold piece. It might take 4 or 5 of them. But the point is, all the research in these credit boom busts, which is what we're going through now, a credit bust, show that gold and silver greatly increase in purchasing power when you have one of these currency events. That's what you need to be thinking of. Don't worry about getting rich. Worry about surviving, protecting your family, providing. And that's why, like you said, get the food, get the guns and ammo, get some currency, get some medals, and then, you know what, live your life. You got to be happy no matter how the government is trying to make you miserable, how they're screwing things up. It's up to you to make sure that you are happy and you're fulfilled, you know, that you're leading the life that you want to live. Don't rely upon the government for that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the big things that I try to convey to my fellow preppers is be well-rounded in your preparedness and not worry about it, because if you're as prepared as you can be, if you do your best at being as prepared as you can be, then you're as prepared as you can be, and you're going to be able to better weather whatever comes down the road. It may be a job loss. It could be a tornado or an earthquake or a hurricane or a flood, or the banks close, or we get a monetary restructuring or whatever it is. But if you have the assets, the physical assets, and those could be tents and water filters and flashlights and a food stockpile, as well as having some gold and silver so that you can either trade or barter that or bribe somebody, even if you have to get out of the area, that all comes into play, you know. And I think that's part of being a well-rounded prepper, is to take a look at all these areas and make sure you're covered in all of them.
Yeah, and for people that ridicule you, or they say, "Oh, you're an extreme prepper like Nat Geo," there, you know, look, forget about them. They don't understand. They don't want to understand. And don't let their ignorance be a limit and injure you and your family. Forget about them, because having some food and all the other items that we talked about just makes total sense. And, you know, Rob, I just have that picture in my mind of all those people in New York City after Hurricane Sandy hit, where basically the middle-class people were dumpster diving because they had no food. That isn't going to happen to me. That's not going to happen to you. And the other image in my mind is this guy had a sword, a fencing sword, that he was fighting off looters from his house on Long Island. And, you know, that's not a real effective self-defensive weapon there. You got to let them get too close to you before you can use that sword. You know, don't put yourself in that situation, because those people in Long Island never thought it was possible that their homes could be destroyed, that their cars would be immobilized, and that they would be stuck in their homes trying to fend for themselves. No sign of the government, no nothing, and it's up to you, so you better be ready.
Yeah, we don't really think about that happening here in this country, unfortunately, but I think that it's highly possible on a broad scale. We've seen it in small areas like you were describing, and it's horrific to think about it happening here. But that's the reality of life. I mean, bad things happen to good people, and you need to be ready. I think you had mentioned this before, but being able to bug out on a moment's notice, I think, is important. It's one of the reasons I like the Prepare Wise food, because it's in the buckets and it's lightweight, and you can take it with you, and you don't have to worry about storing all these different components and then trying to cook while you're on the road or in camp or something. And I think that's one of the solutions that people should look for. And I'm not saying that you should only have certain type of food, because I think MREs are good. I think the bulk food is good. I think people should stock up on the foods they eat every day in their pantry, because that's some of the most easy access food you have. It's the most familiar to your family, especially if you have kids. But you need to have something that you can grab and go, and you should keep a certain amount of your supplies ready to go at a moment's notice. Whether it's a go bag or a set of go bags. I don't know if I would keep a vehicle pre-packed because of the threat of theft and stuff, but Yeah, absolutely. You see those images and you're like, is this America? Can this really be happening here? But
Yeah.
we've got Katrina victims that are still victims. I mean, they're still either without their house or they're destitute or their lives changed forever in that day. We've got Sandy victims that are still waiting for the government to, meet up to their promises, which it's never going to happen. I mean, those people have been forgotten because honestly, it's no longer in the media. It's no longer, nobody wants to hear about it anymore, so the media doesn't report it. And that's what you have to keep in mind, that the government's not here to help you. The government is there to keep them in power. That's what government does. I mean, their biggest concern is continuity of government. In a major disaster, they're not worried about you. They're worried about continuity of government. How do they stay in control? And while they may help some people, quite honestly, even if the government wanted to, and even if they were completely benevolent, it's just not possible to help people on a large-scale disaster. Katrina is a good example. Sandy's a good example where the government is not able to mobilize to take care of people. They can't safeguard people. So you have to take it upon yourself to defend yourself, to prepare, to live outside of your home, have the food, have the protection, and I mean, unless you like dumpster diving, and there's a whole section of people out there called freegans that love to dumpster dive all the time. And I'm like, sure, I could do that if I had to, but I think I would rather open up a bag of food, throw in some boiling water, and serve it to my family as opposed to have to dumpster dive for a half-eaten Danish or something.
Yeah. Yeah. The thought of it turns my stomach. And yeah, you do what you got to do to survive. And the other thing, Rob, is a community, links, network, get to know your neighbors, because in the end, we're going to have to count on each other. We're in this together, and you need your neighbors, and they might not have 20 pounds of pasta in their pantry, but they might have that bottle of Aleve that you need because you got injured, somebody broke an arm or something, and they might have things that you very well need. And not to mention that the country was founded on this sense of community. Just think of the pioneers going across the prairie in wagons, and when something happened, what did they do? They circled the wagons. You're going to have to circle the wagons at some point too if the worst happens, which is by no means assured, but it's enough of a probability that you can't afford to ignore it.
When I first started getting into survival, I had the lone wolf mentality. I was single, I was young, I had that, I can't die sort of mentality that young people have. And I remember getting to a long conversation with a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps who was also a survivalist. Back then we called them survivalists. Today we call them preppers. But he, schooled me basically on how that was a terrible idea, why it doesn't work. And I'm a rather stubborn person, and even more so probably back then because I was also ignorant. And he kept saying and trying to teach me and inform me about how, you need people, you need community, you need a group, you need a team, you need your neighbors, you need a community of people because you're not going to be able to survive otherwise. And I kept resisting what he was telling me. And, but he was so right. He was absolutely correct. I've tried so hard to do it the lone wolf method for so long. I know it doesn't work. I mean, sure, there are some cases of guys who are out in the Idaho woods that have lived for 10, 15, 20 years on their own, but they lived like animals. They lived at a basic survival sustenance rate, eating grubs, sleeping in hollow logs. If that's how, or if that's what you think thriving is, and that's how you want your family to live, well, I suppose it can be done, but it's a very hard life, and that's not what I want. I not only do I want to survive, I want to thrive, and I want to protect my family and have them live as normal a life as possible, no matter what comes. And so the lone wolf mentality doesn't really work very well. You need people around you. Even if you have a self-sufficient farm or a nearly self-sufficient farm, at some point you still need to trade with your neighbors and other people to get things you want. It could be medical skills. It could be a horse. It could be, ironworks or, whatever. There's always... I mean, that's why we have cities. It's not because we can live alone. It's because we need other people.
Yeah, you're so right. And the community is such an important aspect of what you need to do. Unfortunately, it's difficult to get your neighbors to buy into this possible scenario. Like I say, I'm not thinking it's going to be Mad Max beyond Thunderdome. Unlikely. I believe that, we could have a period of social unrest, period of economic collapse, but we can't live without a monetary unit. So somebody's going to have to figure something out. For all we know, they might have figured it out already, and they're not telling us, they're not telling you, but probably you're right, and better off to have friends, because nobody gets anywhere alone in this world. You're always relying upon others, whether it's your family, your coworkers, your friends, strangers. You get stuck on the side of the road, and it's the middle of the night, and you got your cell phone and you call for help, but there's nobody around, and then a stranger stops and helps you just out of the goodness of their hearts, and that's what you have to be ready to do, and you have to be ready to accept that help as well, Rob, right?
Yeah, I've actually been on both sides of that situation where I was the guy who needed the help, and a stranger, helped, and it was a great feeling knowing that somebody was able to stop and help. And I've also been the guy who has stopped and helped, and it was a great feeling to actually, be able to help somebody without having to have them ask for it or expect anything from it and stuff. And I agree. I do not expect a Mad Max scenario. Not to say there won't be pockets of it, especially in inner cities and downtown areas or those high crime areas or wherever that may be. There certainly will be pockets of it, but I think society and civilization as a whole will do what it takes to get back to normalcy as fast as possible, because that's where we want to be. We don't want to be living in a tent or in a cave. We want to be living in a nice, comfortable house. So I think that it's one thing we can probably rely on is having an economy and people doing what they can to get back and live as normal as possible. At least I hope so. I certainly don't want to have an Armageddon scenario if we can avoid it.
Yeah, not the world you want to leave to your kids.
Certainly not. Well, Kerry, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking with us. Is there anything, any advice or anything you'd like to leave with the listeners before we go?
Yeah, just go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. We're aggregating articles that you're going to really find interesting, preppers as well as financial prepping. You can't do one without the other. Get the financial survival toolkit and just be prepared, because, be prepared for the worst, hope for the best, and you'll see what happens.
My thanks to Kerry for taking the time to talk with me on the podcast. You can find out more information about Kerry. You can get his newsletter that he was talking about and get that information about where to store your gold and silver, as well as some other good information. He's got great information on the website, and you can find all that at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. And as this podcast has gone pretty much on the long side, I'm just going to go ahead and end it here. So until next time, enjoy life and be safe.